Welcome everybody, welcome all new subscribers, old subscribers, anybody that's just passing by wanting to know a little bit more about the Valspar Trade Tough Matt paint. Now if you're watching this video, you're probably already watching some of the other videos in this series of flats. My flat renovation, we're going through this property, trying new products out, trying stuff that people have sent me or have picked up through the trade show, the painting and decorating show in Coventry that's roughly in the UK, about November every year. So I do pick up some sample products and pots of paint and fillers and I'm trying them on this. So it's really in a real world situation of actually using these products. But thanks, I'm going to give a shout out to Mike Culpit again. I've mentioned him before. He runs the Decorating Forums UK Facebook, you've probably seen him on TikTok, bits and pieces like that. Also the UK wallpapering Facebook pages and stuff like that. He managed to get hold of some vouchers for Valspar Pro, and with his network of people he knows, gave me an opportunity to actually have some of these vouchers to try some of the Valspar Trade paints. Now you've probably seen a video there where I used the ordinary vinyl matte and I've used it on a ceiling that's in that room behind me in the passageway. I didn't think it was too bad. I was brushing the ceiling all the way through to see what the flashing was like. And I'll be honest, it's a nice paint. It goes on all right, but depending on certain lights, it's the telltale vinyl matte situation of I can see brush marks, I can see the flashing. That's on that other video, so please watch that. But one of the other paints that I've got to try is the Tough Matte. Now in this front entrance corridor that I've got here, you've probably already seen the video about, because you're probably watching this after I've done the priming out of all this woodwork on this panelling using the Zinza 123 and 123 Plus. And I said the next video you'll probably see is me testing this paint out on these walls, on the filling part of the wall, because you've got your, oh, it doesn't matter, does it? You've got your dado railing above that's your filling area. So we're going to be giving it a go on here. It's a tough hard wearing matte, water-based, scrubbable, easily to apply with a brush, great, and low splatter. So if you're using a roller and you can spray it. Now because this isn't a very big room, for this first coat that's going on, I'm going to brush it. And that's the main reason, because I want to feel what the paint's like. I won't thin it. I'll try and use it straight out the tin. Then if it needs thinning, I will thin it. Because that's the beauty with trade paints. Depending on the paint you're using, sometimes they can work straight out the tin. But with it being a trade paint, if it does need a little bit of water, it can take a bit of water to ease it down to make it for easy application. Whereas your retail paints, you probably already know this and you're probably pressing the button. Yeah, you're agreeing with me, hopefully. Retail paints are more geared up for the DIYer. And out the tin, it should be a lot easier to apply because they've already geared it up for being thin enough to apply by a brush or a roller. That said, as a trade person, as in proper paint and decorating trade, if we get retail paint, you'll probably find, and I'm talking to you if you're in the trade as well, if you use a retail paint, you'll probably find it's needing 3-4 coats to cover because it's just that little bit thinner than what a trade paint would be. But saying that, I'm going to give this a go. I'm not spraying it, it's water-based, which I'll wash my brushes out nicely. I don't think there's anything else to say. It's ceiling and walls, high opacity and covering power, superior durability and scrubbability, and stain resistant. And for this passageway here, that's what I want. So bear with me, I'm going to get some paint out. I'm going to start painting. You'll probably see me doing it, and then we'll do a bit of a roundup when I've got that first coat on. Then I'll come back the next day, give it plenty of time to dry, because it does say, I think it's 4 to 6 hours, 2 to 4 hours recoat time. I'm coming up mid-afternoon now on this job, so I'll probably do it another day. But I'll get a first coat on, and then the second part of this video will be actually seeing what it's like with the second coat. And hopefully we can keep it under 15 minutes. Well, I'm not promising. Not promising, can't promise. Let's get on with it. You're going to say to me, what have you done, Phil? What is this colour? It's a dark blue, touch of grey to it. There'll be a touch of black in the blue to get it that grey cast. I'm not normally one for leaving off a wet edge. That, top to bottom, is a wet edge, and that's when I go on about leaving wet edges and flashing. If you leave a wet edge and you come back to that, that'll flash. And this is the same principle. When I see, and it does me head in, it really does me head in. You know, when you're seeing people and they're doing a room and they're rolling a room out before they've cut in, well, the time it takes to roll a room is quite quick. But if you've got a wet edge of that roller and it's drying off, then you've got to come back round the top like that. That's where you get your flashing. Same principles work when somebody does a whole room cutting in, and I'm not bothered whether you're doing it as the first coat or the second coat. Start as you mean to go on. Cut in one wall at a time and then roll it. And if you're cutting in, feather that edge out. If this was a cutting edge, and I'll show you up there when I do that, if that was a cutting edge, feather it out. So when it dries off, it's not leaving a fatty edge. So when you go up with your roller, and you'll get as close as you possibly can up to that top edge, that you don't need to go around with a mini roller. You'll get in as close as you possibly can. It blends, it's fine. But, giving you a lecture on how to paint, sorry. This paint, I'll give you just a synopsis. Is a synopsis the right word? I don't know. That's not, yeah. When I opened it up, got my mixing stick into it. A mixing stick, not a cane. Another pet hate of mine. People are trying to mix up paint with canes and round cylinder objects like a copper pipe. You can't mix paint with something cylindrical because it's aerodynamic and it doesn't mix the paint properly. You'll be forever and a day trying to mix a paint up. When I got my mixing stick out, the texture, the feel of it mixing up, felt very thixotropic, like a jellified. You know when jelly's on the turn of it going like a solid, you can mix it. You know when you've got a Muller light or something like that and you mix it up and it comes off the sides and folds into itself. It's that sort of thing. A bit like a Greek yoghurt sort of texture to it. It mixed up all right. I've got that on. And guess what? Doesn't need any thinning. That is going on a dream. That is going on beautifully. So you can just see, you see how it's patchy? I can see it more than you. I can see where I've touched in filler, using 1, 2, 3 just to prime it out. I can also see areas that are drying quicker than other areas, and that's because I had the Mercer sanding the wall down. And that's probably just taking a bit of the highlighted relief off that was probably a little bit, I don't know, give it a protection coat, do you know what I mean? It's just knocked it off and it's left it exposed, and that's what's soaking in. But enough talking, let me set the camera up. You can just see me do a bit of painting. I'll get down to the bottom end, it'll all be fast forwarded. Now, I've told you before, when you cut in as close as you possibly can. Don't worry about making that perfect cutting line on this first coat, because once that dries, you'll see if you've missed a bit or gone a bit too far up, and on that second coat you can come back to it and neaten it all up. So when I do that, I mean it's not too bad up at the top. When I do that cutting edge, and it's all as good as what the plastering can be, follow the plasterer's edge, there's certain areas that when I come back to it, I'll be able to neaten it up. And what brushes I'm using, I've got my Arrowworthy 2.5 inch slash cut oval for cutting in, and I go on about it, and I'm really, if somebody can tell me a brush that's as good as this for emulsioning, this is the Eco Union 4 inch, lovely soft bristle, goes on a dream, your paint, and I need some more like this, because not all the time you're using a brush for painting, but, well, you do use a brush for painting, but you know when you're emulsioning a wall out, sometimes there's situations like this, not very big, you'd use a brush instead of getting a roller out. But that is my Arrowworthy. You can just see it, you can see. What number is it? It's the 8820 slash cut oval. Very nice for cutting in. Let's get painting. Let's get painting. that paint is lovely to apply. It goes on really well. Be interesting to see what it's like when it is properly dry. With it being a deep colour, I've got a feeling with me brushing it, you're going to have that bit of a flashing suede, you know, suede effect. You know, if you've got a suede skirt or something and you brush it one way and then the other, that sort of finish to it. But let's keep fingers crossed. I'm going to wind up now, because next time you'll see me, I'll be doing the second coat and we'll be doing a conclusion of it. But just first things first, did you see me? I've gone around all these doors and top edges of the dado rail. I've gone onto it. Just nip onto it slightly. I don't know what I'm doing yet with the door frames. I don't know whether to do the door frames in the same colour as the panelling underneath. You could give some comments on that, because you won't be seeing that just yet. This will be a video on its own, and that will be a video on its own, because that's using Valspar. I might do the frames and then just leave the doors white. That might be quite good. My other dilemma: do I keep with that section along there being white with the ceiling to a blue, or do I bring that in with the blue? You'll know by the time this video is done. But let's just say that plastering edge across there is not good, so it might be a case I'll leave that white. So we'll see. It's not a big thing to paint out. So I'll say cheerio, and then you'll be seeing me coming back doing it. You know how it works. See ya. Hello me lovelies. I feel like I'm a bit on a green screen, but it's not green, it's blue. Right, you've blended out to this, and what I've done for you to save you watching paint dry, I've actually gave it the second coat, and I did the second coat yesterday so I could come back to it today, so I can actually see what it's like when it's properly dry. I'm not giving you my opinion when it's still drying. That makes sense. And I've got to say, I'm well impressed. I am well impressed with that. So thanks to Mike, the Decorators Forum, for giving me a voucher for this. That paint is cracking. That is really nice paint. It's good to apply. The finish, and you know, I brushed it, and I've gone to the extreme of brushing it with a 4-inch brush, so I can check, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm looking down that wall, and this is a deep colour, and this will be prone to a flash with a brush. That's very little flashing, to the point that the Valspar that I've got in that room, which is the vinyl mat for the ceiling, that's flashing more like than a Belisha beacon, to be honest, depending on the light. I'm looking at this, I see a slight bit of flashing, not a lot, and if you look square onto it, you won't notice anything, and that's with me brushing it. So let's just talk about Valspar then. Valspar, I mean, Brian, who works for us, who's been working with us since 1966, came at the age of 15. When I told him I was using Valspar, he laughed at me. He says, Valspar? I says, where's that suddenly been resurrected from? He says, because back in the 60s, back in the day, Valspar was a bit of a budget brand. It was like one of the cheap contracted brands on the lines of the Johnos at the time, Johnos and Macphersons and stuff like that. He says, why have you got that? I went, because they've gone to a Valspar trade and we're trying it out to see how good it is. And I will say that is very good. Now, Valspar has been around forever and a day. Boston, Massachusetts, they first started in about 1806, if you do your Wikipedia, 1806, varnishes and paints and bits and pieces like that. And then about turn of the century, 1903, they took on the actual Valspar name. Now, as I say, Brian and my father back in the 60s remember Valspar, and I'm only really just hearing Valspar coming through as a paint in recent years. Now, Sherwin-Williams, if you're in the UK, you probably don't know about Sherwin-Williams, but Sherwin-Williams are a big manufacturing paint company like Dulux in America. They purchased or acquired Valspar back in about 2017, and they paid just over 9 million. Oh no, I think it's more than that. And they paid just over $9 billion, $9.3 billion to acquire Valspar. Why is that? I wonder why that is. Is it they want to put their paints to Valspar, or is this Valspar's their own paint? I'm not sure. But the dilemma we've got, and as a painter and decorator, and I'm pointing at you there, well, I'm pointing at me on the screen. Would you go into B&Q, which is a DIYer, shop, retailer, to buy your paint if you're a professional painter and decorator? That's the question of the day. Some comments. Because I feel there's a little bit of stigma around going into a DIYer retail shop like a B&Q to go and buy a trade paint. Now I know you're going to say, Phil, but you can go and buy Farrow and Ball in B&Q. I know you can, but you can also go and buy Farrow and Ball in Farrow and Ball's own shops. You can also go to Brewers and buy Farrow and Ball. Now, if this paint was being sold through a network of proper decorating centres, I say proper decorating centres, if this was being sold in Brewers, if this was being sold in Paintwell or any of those sorts of independents, you would more likely go and buy this if you are a trade professional painter and decorator than going into B&Q. Would you? The question's there, because I'm not sure whether I would go into B&Q to buy Valspar, even though it says trade on it, because of the stigma around buying your paints from a retail shop. If this was being sold at a decorator centre, I would buy it. Or if there was a dedicated shop that was, let's call it Sherwin-Williams, because we don't really know Sherwin-Williams over in the UK. If Sherwin-Williams came in and says, we've got dedicated decorators outlets and they sell Valspar with other Sherwin-Williams paints, you would probably more likely buy it and feel comfortable buying the paint. I don't know whether I'm comfortable buying my paint from B&Q, because I would perceive, and the word is perceive, Valspar Trade to be trying to sell a trade paint to a DIYer. And I don't want to be rude to DIYers that are watching, but if you're a DIYer and if you go into B&Q and buy this, you've got a cracking paint. It is brilliant. That colour is lovely. Less flashing than I've seen on a lot of paints. It's a hard wearing finish. It does everything it says on the tin. You can spray it. It's water based. Brushes wash out really nice. I mean, what else does it say? Superb durability, stain resistant, high opacity and coverage power. That's had 2 coats. Really pleased with it. But I'm not sure I would purchase this, a Tough Matt from B&Q, unless somebody said to me they definitely wanted this paint, which it is very good. I just don't sit comfortable with it. Do you understand? It's a really good paint that needs to be out there for the mass painter and decorator, professional painter and decorator. And I'm not sure whether a professional painter and decorator would go into B&Q to buy Valspar Trade that's sitting next door to Valspar Retail, that's sitting next door to Good Home Paint, which people say Good Home Paint is really good, which is B&Q's own brand. As a professional, and we've been in business since 1965, I don't think we'd be going into B&Q to buy this, even though it's really good. Help me out on that. What's your thoughts? Brilliant. This room's coming on. My next video you're going to see is me painting that with Valspar as well, because we're trying Valspar out. There'll be videos coming up there. Thanks for listening to me. Give us some comments. What's your thoughts on the video? But this, very good. Pleased with it. Valspar Trade. Let you decide.